to start off with a confession. You guys aren't quite getting the TED Talk that I originally wrote. I had, if I do say so myself, written something that was funny, cute, clever. You know, writers always think that their work is funny, cute, and clever when they mean it to be. I was going to tell you about how the start of my talk would be about my personal life story. And then I was going to tell you about how I was raised a poor black man singing and dancing in Mississippi. And if you are familiar with the movie The Jerk, you would know that, in fact, that was not my life story. And if you ever have never seen the movie The Jerk, you should definitely see it, because there's nothing like seeing Steve Martin, who is the color of uncooked pastry shell, sitting there with his family, his black family that he doesn't realize wasn't his birth family. And then I was going to say, oh, just funning. No, let me tell you my real life story. And then I was going to move into the lyrics from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air TV show, you know, TV Will Smith before he was movie star Will Smith. But a little thing called the election happened, and I decided, maybe I don't really want to start off that light. But then I thought, you know, the election really is underscoring with a twist everything I was going to say anyway. So if you think that this is the part where I go into this big rant about the election, no, I'm not. Not that I was happy with the results, but as the earlier video said, that is my views, not the views of TEDx. But my topic is storytelling as advocacy, and one of the things that's really important in thinking about story is, what is story really? Story is somebody who's a storyteller placing something in front of you that hopefully connects with something that's inside of you. They lay some emotional tract between you and the story, and hopefully something connects. You know, to me, that's the power and that's the magic of storytelling. Now, pretty much every career I've done, and I've had a few in my life, has been storytelling of some kind. My very first career was I was a newspaper reporter. And one of the things about being a newspaper reporter is that is sheer storytelling. That's deciding what facts you're going to use. That's deciding what facts you're not going to use. It's basically using a camera angle of an event with words. Now, most of the years that I was a newspaper reporter, my significant other was and still is actually, a photojournalist. And I noticed and saw many times over the years that no matter how simple or completely mind-numbingly dull the story, he had to take several dozen, if not hundreds, of photos so that back at the newsroom, an editor could select which of those photos would tell the proverbial 1,000 words. But a lot of writing a news story is 100 words, also telling 1,000 words. So I got to share with you guys my favorite newspaper correction of all time. For those of you who are young and haven't maybe actually looked at a physical newspaper, you know, back in the day of actually buying a newspaper, if you open up the page, the front page, there'd be a little column where they ran corrections for all the mistakes that were in the paper the day before. Remember those things? And so my favorite correction is, we apologize for the fact that we said that such and such church festival sold chicken sandwiches at their event. They sold chicken dinners. And one of the reasons why that was a really funny correction was sandwiches, dinner. But in retrospect, it's like the church was saying, look, We're a good church. We're a big church. We don't just nourish the soul, we nourish the body too. We don't sell half-assed chicken sandwiches at our events. And so, when you look at the election, for example, regardless of who you voted for, it was people who were passing off chicken sandwiches as full-course chicken meals, and people who were thinking they were eating a meaty chicken meal with great sides, and it was really a chicken biscuit. But it was still people putting out there how they viewed the facts they wanted to present. They were really so much storytelling as giving words to what they wanted you to think. So my other career was law. And I was an employment attorney, an employment litigator for several years. And the law is nothing more, or at least litigation, than storytelling. And I know what you're thinking. I mean storytelling. And facts matter to the law, and the law considers the facts. But honestly, the bottom line, if you're a litigator, either by motion or in front of a judge or jury, is who's going to tell the best story. Who's going to tell the story that someone's going to believe. And even if you're just going to court to get out of a speeding ticket, something I wouldn't recommend you try to do, unless you really weren't speeding, and even then, it's still going to be a matter of, does the judge believe your story? So that's why if you tell a truthful story to the judge, for example, you were speeding because you were rushing your parakeet to the vet, your dying parakeet to the vet, you're taking a chance that the judge likes birds. And if they believe you, then okay, then you got out of a ticket. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, the law is only about the truth? Well, no. It tries to be, just like with journalism. Journalists try to be objective. Lawyers, for the most part, try to tell the facts. But at the end of the day, it's about whether somebody believes the narrative, whether their story matches the narrative that you already believe. So one of the things about storytelling is that you're always fighting with the narrative that somebody else believes. But the great thing about today, the awesome thing about today, is that it's not just a handful of people that are in charge of the narrative. I used to teach a creative writing class to middle school students, and one of the first assignments I always gave to them was write a song. Write the lyrics to a song. Because a song is nothing more than a story told to a beat. But these days, someone can write a song, record a song in a studio, and put it on the internet. Somebody can write a short story, a novel, a nonfiction book, a play, and they can package it and put it on the internet, either for sale or for free. And even if you're not a creative, you're not an artist, people are telling their stories one tweet at a time, one Facebook post at a time, one Instagram photo with comments at a time. Each and every one of you could go home tonight and start a new blog. And it can go live tomorrow. Speaking of Facebook, you ever notice, those of you who are on Facebook, that little feature called Live that pops up? All Live is storytelling in motion. And if you're on Facebook, you've seen people celebrate live. You've seen people mourn live. You've even seen people die live. And so, in telling stories, know that just by you sharing something on Facebook or on Twitter or in a blog, you're impacting people. What's going to impact you more? Reading on Facebook about a friend who just told you about how their brother committed suicide and why, or seeing a 1-800 suicide number on the side of the bus as you're driving to work? One's a story, one's just information. And that's why the whole point of what I'm talking about is we're all looking for stories, for information, for things that touch us to rise above the noise. And I'll be honest, that's one of the things that most irritated me about the election. And be clear, it was going to be its own special kind of ugly no matter who won. We all know this. But one of the worst things about the election is it wasn't about storytelling, it was about people trying to tell other people's stories. It wasn't about folks saying, here's my story, let me share it. So one of the things that I really have become late in life as a storyteller is I became a playwright a few years ago. And little did I know that that was going to be my big aha about storytelling. My first play was a 10-minute play that was put on, I should say the first play that was on stage was a 10-minute play at the Barn Players in Johnson County, and it was inspired by my grandmother who has Alzheimer's disease. She's in fact at a nursing home just down the road. And anybody who knows me personally knows that my grandmother is the mushiest, softest piece of my heart. So it was only natural that probably that inspired me to write a little 10-minute play. And when the play was over, the woman sitting to the right of me, who didn't know I was the playwright, turned to her friend to the right of her, and she was very emotional talking about, I don't know who wrote that, but they totally nailed what it's like to have to make decisions about an older, sick relative. And let me just tell you, that was like that, that the heavens opening up like, what? Because I can tell you, with all the stories I wrote as a reporter, with columns I've written as a columnist, with diversity training I've done, with arguing before judges, there's something about someone reacting in front of you to a story you've told and seeing it move them that made me go, oh, here we go. This is something. So I think it would be fitting for me to wrap this up with telling you my actual true story. No jokes aside. I was born right here in Kansas City, Kansas in the 60s. In fact, about to celebrate the anniversary of my birth next week, to a single mother. And her and my grandparents, I've already told you how much my grandmother, they were awesome, and they raised me to just be, for good or bad, who I am today. But the biggest tool they gave me were actually two things. One is they provided a great education for me. And two, they really indulged my love of all stories. I mean, I could tell you about every major story line on a soap opera since the 70s. And because of what they provided, I was able to become a journalist and a lawyer and an educator and a speaker and a writer and a playwright, which, because now I can look back on that life, what's the big deal? But as a child, that was as foreign a concept to me as growing up to be a pirate or a scuba diver or the Queen of England. And so because I was able to create new worlds for myself, it just sort of became natural that I thought, I want to tell more stories. And so if there's one thing I totally realize with everything I've done is that no matter how upset I get about what goes on in the world, what goes on in the country, what even goes on in my personal life, I'm a believer. I am a crazy believer in the power and the magic of storytelling. So if there's nothing else you remember from tonight besides the chicken sandwich versus the chicken dinner story, it's how important it is for you to tell your stories, and to be truthful in your stories, and to listen to other people's stories, and to hear in your heart their truths. Because that's the only thing that's ever going to rise above the noise. It's the only thing that's going to ever change anything. And all I can say is, let's do it one story at a time. Thank you.